Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon to everyone who is watching the show. This is The Focus. It's 4 o'clock on Thursday. It must be The Focus from Video My Job with myself, Stephen O'Donnell. My very, very special guest today is the lovely Crystal Miller-Leigh. Crystal, can you tell us where exactly in the world are you?
Right now, I'm in Denton, Texas, which is a suburb of Fort Worth.
Fantastic, fantastic. So to recap, everyone who's joining us for the first time, we have quite a few new viewers today. Anyone who's watching us from anywhere in the world, the show, The Focus, is obviously focused on video in recruitment and all the ways in which you can be using video, even if you're doing it for the first time or if you're very experienced, and going through the different aspects of what we do. Video is obviously a communications tool that everyone is very familiar with. But in business and commerce, a lot of people, they're maybe not using it as much as they can do, or they think they can do, or they have plans to do so, and they're not quite sure just how to get along. So we'll be talking about ways in which you can be doing it, as well as some of the technical stuff that can help to take the barriers out of the way. Last week we spoke with Wendy McDougall from Firefish Software. I had my Firefish t-shirt on in honor of Wendy. Everything that Wendy does is scarlet, so you're never unsure if Wendy or any of our team are in the room, because they're in scarlet shirts, and their branding is throughout everything that they do, and they use video an awful lot, as natural as breathing. So thanks to Wendy for last week, and thanks to everyone who joined us and everyone who's joined us again today. So with Crystal here today, let's not beat around the bush. We're going to be talking about employer branding, but using storytelling for employer branding, and the ways in which you can get that story, the insight, the behind the scenes story of an organization to not only the public at large, but prospective employees, and maybe even to existing employees, so that people, they know, they have a sense of community, they have a sense of who they're working for and with and alongside, and that when people join the organization, they know what they're getting into. So first of all, can I ask Crystal, as a lot of people do ask, how would you define storytelling from an employer branding point of view?
I mean, storytelling is just that. It's the process of telling a story. And so when you look at how the brain functions, storytelling serves as proxy for experience, and it's how we've learned for hundreds of thousands of years. And so I think for me, storytelling, and this is not the question you asked, but I'm going to answer it this way anyway, much like political debate candidates, I'm going to answer the question I want to answer. So when you look at storytelling, for me, I really latched onto a book called Resonate, and it goes through the history of storytelling and how we use stories to keep ourselves alive. So back in the age of the caveman, it would be things like, that just behind that tree, there's an animal that will kill you, right? And so it's evolved, right, to where, you have stories of, like I was talking to my husband about last night, of like Anne Boleyn, right? The story of her life has shifted so very much from what it probably actually was to be able to tell and impart virtue training, right? So it's proxy for actual experience. And so that's essentially, when you look at it from a branding perspective, employer branding, you're looking at the experience of work, right? So what is it like to be part of this company? What is it like to do this job? What is it like to work with these people? What does it mean to make these products or deliver these services to the world?
So does this mean that the people who are hearing the story, they get to feel something rather than just hear facts and figures? They get to understand more.
Yeah, again, proxy for emotional experience. So the idea is to cast your story, write your story in such a way that you have a relatable hero. So for an employee, that would be someone that looks and feels much like themselves in terms of experience and type of job and location in the world. Which is why when you're making like employer brand stories and videos, you don't want to film all of it in one location and then send it out because for the entire world, because it won't be it won't be reflective of the work experience across a global company.
I think personally, as an old duffer, frankly, the term storytelling and the word stories to me seems relatively nebulous. It's kind of fluffy, whereas people who are, and maybe it's come around again, but people who are using Instagram stories and so many social media platforms where there's a story function to it. They're much more used to it being a definite thing. I was speaking with, I've been spending a lot of the past few weeks at the Edinburgh Festival with comedian stand-up comics. And it used to be the case that stand-up comics would get on stage, they would knock out, 100 gags, just, 3 men went into a pub and punchline. But nowadays, they tell a story. They'll go around the houses. They'll embroider the story. They might only be, a lower number of gags per minute, but the people that in the audience are going with them. They're following the story and they remember the story, and the story means something more to them than just a quick fire joke. So from a storytelling point of view, does that tie in with what you're talking about? You're embroidering the fuller bodied effect there.
Well, yeah. I mean, so think about what that would be for employer branding, for the employment experience if there weren't stories. Yeah. You'd be looking at technical job descriptions. You'd be looking at probably pictures and images and things like that. Right? So a picture is important. Video is many times more engaging depending on which study you read. 3 seems to be the average accepted number. So, if you've got something that's moving and then you add words into that, and those words hit on the emotional drivers of the audience that you're trying to reach, crafting a story is a highly technical thing. But when you're in tune with your audience and you're able to craft that story, you don't need hundreds of gags a minute.
So employers large and small all over the world, I've often found myself speaking with them, and they'll say, well, we don't have any stories. We have, we can say the company was founded in 1975 and we've grown, this, that, and the other in that space of time. So that's, but really what they're talking about is just a timeline. That's not a story. Right. So they often don't feel like they have stories, and I know the stories are there. But what would be, from your perspective, examples of typical stories that you would see within an organization that they could bring out in ways that they can be more transparent to the world?
Sure. So to preface that answer, one of the things that you want to look at is stories. The intent behind stories is to deliver tacit or hidden information.
Yeah.
And so when we look at that and they go, we don't have any stories, all that tells me is you haven't talked to your employees yet, right? So when you talk to your employees, the kind of stories that you'd want to be able to deliver would be things like, what does a typical day look like for you at work? Why did you join this company? What's the value of the products and services we bring? And I would argue, like, if you talk to a business owner or a marketing department or somebody in recruiting, and they can't explain to you the meaning of the work that your organization does, they step back. You need to learn the story, because that's so compelling. For example, one of the videos that I shared with you was for Carrie, right? Like, the whole purpose of their company is to better feed, better nourish the world, right? So what's the impact of that? Like, the impact is pretty far reaching. Nourish the world is the feed, drink, right? So like just life. Okay, at its basic fundamental level, you're providing the ability to live. But beyond that, depending on how you do farming, you're also helping sustainable farming grow. You're also, helping economies grow. You're also employing a lot of people. You're also, making it easier for children to take medicine, like whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of hidden stories that are there, right? So you have to get in and explain that. And for employer branding, I think that one's probably one of the most compelling, because we spend 2/3 of our waking day at work. And so when you think about the majority of your life is spent working, you want that work to mean something. And there's a meme that runs around that says, when you die, your boss will have your job posted the next day, right? Which is terribly depressing. But the reality is, like, the job may get reposted, but the work you do still has meaning, probably, right? So we need to get into what that meaning is. And even if you're the janitor of an organization, the work you do has meaning, because if you suddenly stop coming, the place would be kind of uninhabitable within a week or two, right? Like, it gets dirty pretty and multiply that by the number of people there. If you're giving someone a fast food meal, like, you may think, well, once they eat that meal, it doesn't matter. But what about the experience that meal allowed them to have? What about the, family time they may have had, or got them to their interview where they got their own job? And you just don't know. And so those are things that you have to explore.
So everyone who works in an organization has not only a story but a whole series of stories, and everyone your organization touches, your customers, your suppliers, there are stories there as well, and these are all stories that help to illustrate that inside picture of your organization, and when you're thinking about those stories, can it often seem quite contrived when companies come up with, well, we want to tell this story because it hits these points from a sales and marketing point of view? Can that seem like it's overly contrived?
Well, sure. And I think scripting has a lot to do with that, right? So for my agency, we don't have our clients script their stories, largely just because I don't think that ends well. It does end up looking overly contrived. Yeah. You can see that it's a psychological thing, but when someone is answering a question for the first time, which is part of the reason I don't actually spend a lot of time reviewing questions, because I don't want the answers to seem contrived, but you can see when someone's trying to recall, they look up and over, or they look down. You can also look down because you want your chin to look thinner, which is why I do it. But your face shifts, right? And so that in and of itself looks contrived, which is why you can kind of tell when people are acting, and why people you can't tell are acting get paid a lot of money. Yeah. But so yes, I think that it can. That said, you can go over some basic topics, and so sending the people that you're going to be interviewing an idea of what you're trying to get at is helpful, so that they can think through different scenarios that they want to explain. The trick is to do it very generally, very broad based. So like, we're going to be talking about what it's like to come to this company every day. We're going to be talking about what you experience in this location. We're going to be talking about like what it means to you to do the job that you do, right? And that'll give them some basic ideas of things to think about, and then you can flesh it out. The beauty of video is that if it's not live, you can go back and edit it. And so once you explain to your video subjects that, okay, like this doesn't have to be perfect, you're gonna stumble over words, and that's okay if you stumble, to recount in your mind and then continue on from where you were, or you can take that sentence over, and the power of editing will make it all beautiful. Yeah. So that helps people really calm down, I think, and it gives them the ability to tell better stories because they know they don't have to be flawless.
So before I ask another question, can I just people who are watching, if you want to ask any questions, just put them in the sidebar, and we'll get to them straight away. So if you're interested, I know we've got quite a few people online, then please chip in. So when you're dealing with clients and you're looking to put together those stories and pick out those stories, is there an advantage that you're an outside organization coming in to do that from a third-party perspective? And also, do you look for stories at all levels of the organization? People on the shop floor as well as in upper levels of management or different locations in a company.
Yeah, so let's actually start with the end of your story or the end of your question first. Yeah, I think it's critical to get stories from all different levels. Here's why: the employment experience is different at all different levels, right? So the person who just started in your company 90 days ago has a vastly different perspective than the person that's been with you through 3 acquisitions in 15 years. Yeah. The person that's an individual contributor has a different experience than a mid-level manager who has a completely different experience than your executive team. Yeah. So being able to get all of those different perspectives, and even in terms of what they're trying to accomplish, will serve you in your employer branding and storytelling. Yeah. So for the first part of that question, is it helpful to bring someone in outside of the organization? I would say there's a benefit to it. I don't know that it's an end-all, be-all need. I think what's important when it comes to bringing in a third party is that they understand your organization. Yeah. So if you bring in a video company and you don't give them your brand guidelines, you don't sit down with them and tell them your story, your challenges, and where you're going, that's going to be a problem. They're not going to be able to serve you as well as if you had given them that information, right? Yeah. The story feels like part of your organization's come to life. Yeah. So in putting together stories for any organization, you might have one central theme, but you want to then layer on top of that different aspects of stories within an organization. How do you plan that out when you're thinking in terms of getting this story on video to broadcast to the wider world? So unless we're doing something that's like response to a reputational crisis or a big event that's happened, then the stories and the videos that we're putting together are part of a larger campaign. So when we sit down and build this campaign out, the campaign objective might be, we want to show people what it's like to work in manufacturing, or we want to show people the inside of the culture of an organization. Then we'll map out all of the different ways that we want to do that. Video is one segment of that, right? And so in that video, we want to be able to show 3 central values, one that encompasses one objective and story. So then we may need to show 3 or 4 different videos to be able to show the entirety of what we want to be able to explain. So for example, going back to the manufacturing thing, if we're looking at, we want to show what it's like to work in manufacturing, we're going to have a video that's specific to people on the shop floor. We're going to have a video that's specific to supervisors and managers. We're going to have a video that's specific to the meaning of the work that they do. And we're going to have a video that's specific to the culture, right? So there's 4 different types of videos that'll get put into one campaign, but all of them should be planned before anything is put out at all.
Okay. So by way of explanation, and I should have said this at the beginning, if anyone's interested, if you don't know Crystal, then you really should. But just to establish your credibility, you spent a long time in HR before then, talent acquisition and employer branding and so on, and so you've got that credibility behind you. But specializing in a field like this, do you see this that organizations are working on this in ways that they never were before? How, in terms of the evolution of talking about your stories, companies have often been very shy about revealing themselves, and when you're telling these kind of stories, they can seem, well, they can often feel quite exposed. Is that quite regular when you're speaking with organizations? And what typical companies are you dealing with, if you're able to name any names?
Yeah, no, that's fine. So I think I gave you a couple of examples from Carrie, is one of the companies that we work with. We've worked with we work with lots of companies. So the American Heart Association. So the size of the company, I think, isn't as relevant as the culture. So the mindset and the culture of the organization is pretty important. So some companies have a very transparent, open culture with each other and with the world. I look at like companies like Glassdoor that tout transparency, and so they have to kind of show that, right? So I'm not going to comment on whether they do a good job or not a good job, but that's the idea, right? If you're going to promote yourself as a transparent company, those companies seem to usually do a better job of saying, this is who we are behind the curtains. Conversely, there are a lot of organizations that don't understand that how they treat their employees, what their employment experience is like, actually matters to them. They understand products and services, and that's what they sell. That's marketing, right? So why would we show all of the behind the scenes? And so there's a little bit of an education piece around like, this actually could benefit your sales. If people understand how the products and services get made, distributed, et cetera. So that's just an education piece you can get there. There's a lot of studies around that. If that's something that you're struggling with, I would say either pop something in your questions or shoot a note to Stephen or I, and we'd be happy to get you information. So
when doing a bit of research for today, I saw an article where there was a question asked, do brands create stories or stories create brands? Now, it seems that one of those arguments that can go around in circles, but I know that companies, whether they like it or not, they have an employer brand and they might have a consumer brand. And within all of that will be those stories. But in the same way as, any organization has lots of micro cultures that in aggregate make up the company culture altogether. But those employer stories, do they in aggregate build the the brand of an organization?
I think so. I think probably one of the most powerful examples of this is AT&T. So prior to 1997, AT&T was known as a phone company, right? And was it 1997 or 2007?
Yeah,
I feel like it was 1997. They decided to start changing the way that they were looked at. In 2007, they did a complete shift around how they shared information with the world to be able to show all of the things that they did beyond installing cable service and mobile phones and the like. right? So you started seeing stories about loud bells and how they were actually responsible for the first television broadcast and all of
Yeah.
these different things, right? So you got to see like all of the science behind them. They started
Yeah.
sharing in different laboratories, sharing how they were creating things for haptics and driving. Like they started changing the stories that they were telling. And in doing so, they changed the way the world looked at them.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
there's still a phone company, like that didn't go away.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you recognize there's so much more than that. And so you're seeing the shift. Again, I think that's one of the most powerful ways to do that. But yes, I would say stories absolutely make
Yeah.
sense. You
Yeah.
can look at like Adidas and Nike and those are two really huge brands where you can see that. I love Nike storytelling because of the way that they've crafted their employee stories to match their consumer
Yeah.
stance, right?
Yeah.
So I think that works really well.
So are there particular organizations that you've worked with that you can give as examples of where they've gone from position X to position Y? They've plotted a course so that they can get to a position where they're much more transparent to from a recruitment point of view, prospective employees, but also the world in general.
So as much as I'd love to answer that, we actually signed pretty hefty NDAs that from telling those things. But I would say that there's there are some case studies out there. I like Deloitte's.
Yeah.
I think it's called First Year Wisdom. I've been talking about this for years. You think I'd remember the name of it? But basically, they were having trouble with recruitment around graduates, and so they couldn't get them to retain, right? So they started telling stories from people who had passed their first year of what did you learn in your first year?
Yeah.
How did you manage your life, right? How did you balance all of this to be able to meet a really considerable demands associated with working with one of the big four consulting firms and still thrive, right? And so you saw half a dozen different stories. They had microsites associated with that.
Yeah.
There is a case study that shows like what the retention was and what it grew to. Power of the Googles, you can find that one pretty easily. EY did a pretty interesting case study around how video helps them. Like it's there, it exists. I know that I can't say the company name. One of the companies that we're working with right now is having a huge issue with distribution centers. And so we're working with them to help show the realities around like this is what it's like to come work here, so people are prepared. And it's not actually to help recruit people, it's to dissuade people from applying that shouldn't be there. And video can be really useful in that. You can show hot, sweaty conditions, right? You can show people that are really uncomfortable. UPS has the best example of this. Their truck drivers are like so and you're just like, there's no way I'd want this job. That video worked. Like that's the whole point of that video. So is to get people who shouldn't be in that job to say this is not good for me.
Well, I know certainly one of our clients in Australia is Australia Post, and Australia Post they have not only postmen delivering letters and packages, but they've got trucks going all over Australia through the outback with those the long train trucks. And this is a really tough, arduous job. And one of the things that they do to tell that story is to literally show, their men and women in the field driving the trucks and the life that involves, because it's a really tough job, but it does suit some people perfectly and others not. So from a video perspective, it's a great way of making sure that those who do apply, they know full well, or at least they have a good idea what they're getting into. And the people for whom this is going to be well suited, more of those will apply. And the people who aren't, they're going to be dissuaded, as you say. We have a client, the Siemens, where they reported a rise in measurable criteria of candidates, a step up of 170% in the caliber of candidates applying. And that seems like a crazy number, but largely it came from two places. People being dissuaded from applying in the first place. So the relevant candidates weren't applying because in video they were getting much more of a 360 understanding of the organization. And those softer, more passive candidates were applying where they never would have done before, because they're able to much more accurately self-select for that vacancy.
They're able to self-select, and I would argue that they're able to see themselves in the video, right? So again, when you cast appropriately, and you don't have, and when I say cast appropriately, the previous era of employer branding videos had managers and leaderships talking about different functions, right? So that's not nearly as compelling as putting that function in there so that someone who works in that same function or a similar field can say, oh, that's what I do. I can do that. Oh, this is like me. Right? And that's what you want, that this is like me moment.
Well,
so that
on screen, if they say, you know, a picture speaks 1,000 words, then video is a multiple again of that. But if you can, without actually saying it, if you can literally demonstrate your diversity, if you can demonstrate the you know, the mix between sexes working in your environment, then people can literally see it and they think, yeah, I could work there. You know, sorry.
So stat that I can share around that. I can't attribute the company, but what I can do is say that we're working with an organization now that has had historically had an issue with females applying to the company, to the point where this last year they said, hey, we have to have female representation in everything that we do. And we looked at it and said, well, that would be great if you had enough females here to do that. And so, you know, we've made this concerted effort in over the last 2.5 years, actually, of showing women, and as they're hired, walking through their journey with them of this is what it's like to work here. And in fact, they've seen a 228% lift in female applicants, and they've seen a 40% increase in female hires that have lasted more than 6 months. So that's a great story, right? But it's because they were able to see themselves in video, and it wasn't just some talking head saying, we believe in diversity, inclusion, or we're in an environment that fosters everything. Like they don't want to, they don't hear it, they want to see it.
And if you can tell that story, if you have an environment where, frankly, it's maybe 90% male, and you know that women aren't applying because they know it's 90% male, then A, realizing that it's an issue, and B, realizing that you're missing out on so many great candidates because there's a perception out there that it's not the environment for women to apply to. That's obviously going to be a problem, and it's going to affect your business. So from that point of view, getting on to my next question, how can you measure ROI from employer branding and storytelling and doing it through video? How can you measure that ROI?
So I'm actually going to go back to what you just said before you do that. Sorry, I'm doing it again. I'm going to answer the question I want. But so when you have that issue, because I think this is important, because maybe it's not female in your organization, maybe it's something else, but a lot of companies struggle with diversity balance and inclusion balance. So if you're trying to work through one of those challenges and you are, let's say, 90% male, and you need to have a better balance in the genders, I think the first step is how you construct that story. That's really important to be able to acknowledge this is where we are, and it's not where we want to be. And so what we need from you, females that we want to apply, is to help us learn what we need to change, right? And it's more difficult than just, hire female people, right? Like they have to be able to fit within the environment that exists, the culture that exists, and they have to be able to drive the change that the organization is looking for. So the stories that you would tell in the beginning and construct in the beginning, and the videos in the beginning, would be actually talking about the challenge that these women would need to come in to help change. And so what you have to understand there is that there's a decent amount of behavioral psychology that goes into the planning of that storyline. And I would work really closely with your OD department to make sure you're hitting on the drivers that you need for change. That storyline, that campaign to craft something like that is a 12 to 18 month project. Be able to make the kind of difference. Again, you can make a quick difference and hire a bunch of whatever it is that you're missing, right? Whether it's women or something else. But if your culture isn't prepared for it, they won't stay. So you do have to look at video as any story that you construct as a means to help you change where you are, but it's got to be within the realm of reality. So you can only make a shift of 5 to 15% in any given quarter without destabilizing your culture. So you have to be aware of that when telling your stories. To answer the question that you just asked around ROI. So ROI in storytelling is a little bit difficult, but it's not completely impossible to do. So you need to look at how's ROI typically measured. It saves me time, it makes me money, right? So storytelling can make money if you're selling a product. That's not the case for employer branding. I mean, there's an argument that can be made, but it's super convoluted and complex. So let's set that aside for a minute and focus on saving time. So where video can be really effective, and I think where it's easier to measure, is when you look at the time and saved, even just in the technical writing of putting together all of the pieces that you put out. So video, especially things like with Video My Job, you can do very quick videos that you can put out into the world.
Yeah.
You can also do highly produced videos that take a lot of time to construct. Yeah. But even so, you're not doing technical writing on that. You're not having to employ copywriters in the same way that you would with any other type of piece. So there's that piece. The other piece that you'll be able to really, I think, measure yourselves in recruitment is the time to apply. Yeah. So, and then we also look at throughput. So through and the watch. Yeah. When they're watching the video, like what is the percentage of people that stayed and watched the entire video? And
of course, if it's online, then pretty much everything can be counted. And if it can be counted, then you can measure one campaign against another, and those campaigns against all previous exercises, and compare and contrast. Sure. So I'm just noticing time. I'm going to move on to our every week we have videos of the week, and I'd ask you for a couple of videos. So I'm going to share my screen so everyone can see the videos that I'm going to be referring to. If I can just share my screen, bear with me 1 second whilst technology works its magic. So tell me if you can see my screen now. Okay, so this video here, I'm going to turn the volume down a little bit, Crystal, but can you explain as a click play on here? This is from Kerry. Can you tell us a little bit about this video and why this stands out for you?
Sure. So one of the reasons that I love this video, it's basically a flavorist talking about his personal passion and how that relates to the work that he does, right? And so there's this idea that work life and personal life is separate, like work-life balance, which is really absurd, by the way. I hate that phrase more than anything in the world, because we don't have two lives. We have one life. And your personal interests should be able to help you in your professional life. I mean, I guess it kind of depends on what you're interested in. But for this guy, and I think for a lot of guys like him and gals like him, the things that he was interested in, the precision around working with an instrument, the dedication to practice, and all of these things really did pair nicely with the commitment and dedication required to be a scientist.
It also, for me, I'm just going to pause it there. For me, it touches on that idea that employers are always looking for rock stars who look a certain way and have a certain profile and so on. And this fella here, he's quite blunt about saying, I'm a bit nerdy about things, and my attention to detail is this, and I love to do that, and I love playing violin and so on, and all of those aspects of his personality, they all tie into him being a perfect fit for the job, and the job being a perfect fit for him. So he might not be the sort of caricature that you might draw of the rock star candidate, but he's perfect for the role, and they're talking about the ways in which he is exactly that.
And if you're putting this out into the world as they did, what you would hope is that other people would say, "Oh, I'm also detail oriented. Oh, I'm also a little OCD. Oh, I'm also really meticulous." Yeah. I understand the dedication required with being able to play an instrument, right? So it's not that you necessarily want to hire a whole bunch of musicians, but the concepts behind that help. And for Kerry, it was really there was also a component of being able to show like what was important to them, these individuals, what was important to them was also important to Kerry.
Yeah. So sticking with Kerry, I'll just close this. You don't want to see my personal messages. So this is another video here, and I'll just adjust the volumes down on this one here. So again, this is telling the story of the organization.
Lots of ongoing change.
Yeah, so actually, if you don't mind, if you'll press pause for a second, I think it would be helpful actually to listen to the first maybe 10, 15 seconds of this, and then we can pause and talk about it.
Absolutely. I'll put the volume up a little bit. There we go.
Imagine a workplace where we're all working really hard, lots of turnover. We see lots of ongoing change, and we sort of miss a strong foundation around leadership, around business. Who would like to work in an environment like that?
Okay.
And then fast forward.
Just put the volume down. Yeah.
So when we start this video, it's acknowledging problems, right? So this is what's called a change story. So it's, hey, we've had some issues, we understand, maybe you've burned your reputation in the marketplace, maybe you were just struggling to recruit a specific type of people because you had a team that was toxic or whatever, but it's acknowledging we had a problem.
Yeah.
Now, here's what we've done to fix it. And so this story actually walks them through, like, here was our issue, now here's where we're at, and here's how we're addressing all of these problems. And in the video, you see things like this, which is wholly unattractive, right? Like, nobody wants to see trash and waste, but that was a problem in their area at that time. And so they want to feel like we made these changes, and now we've won this environmental award for how we interact with the community and what we're doing with wastewater in our plants.
Yeah. What I really like about this video is the authenticity that's right through it. If you had, for example, a professional narrator talking over the top of that, it wouldn't be at all believable in the way that it is with the individuals that we've got on screen. They're telling the stories, and again, as you say at the start, they're conceding, look, there was an issue we felt was important to address. This is what we've done to resolve that, and this is what came of that, the environmental award, and so on. And you see real people in the real work environment, and it's not just that overly shiny narrated with an actor type of video. You can literally imagine working there. You can literally imagine, working alongside these people, and you've got insight that you just couldn't get in any other way.
Yeah, and so Jenna Brown is the head of the employer branding program at Carey, and so one of the things that we talked about specifically was that there was this long history of challenges in this market, but the company had real business needs that needed to be met around hiring and keeping employees. And the cost associated with not being able to hire and keep employees, I think with any organization, not just Carey, when you have these kind of business commitments, especially in a manufacturing environment, is you really run the risk of contract violations, right? And so I'm not saying that's where they were, but that's always the risk. And so, being able to, as employer branding, being able to make these kind of videos, get them out in the world and get people staffed, you're actually able to impact the bottom line of your business. And I think that's fantastic. For them specifically, they reached 1.5 million people in the first 3 months of that being put out. They were able to get back on track with the hiring, and that's huge.
One of the other things that people often neglect or are not entirely aware of is when you make a video, then you have a video, and it might sit in your Facebook or your YouTube channel. And if it sits there alone, then that's all well and good, but it's a moment in time. But if you're making videos on a regular basis, then you're building up a three-dimensional picture of your organization. And it might be videos for all different types of purposes, but anyone who's thinking about coming to work for you will be researching your company, and they'll be looking at all of those bits of content, and they'll be building up a picture in their own mind as to whether they should apply, whether they should come for an interview, whether they should accept an offer. And when you build up that living, breathing representation of your company in video format, where you've got an archive of that, then it's a really rich theme. And of course, you don't get to the point where you have 10 or 20 or 50 videos in your archive without having recorded video number 1 and video number 2. So you do have to start somewhere. And it may well be that your first video or a couple of videos are a bit on the sketchy side. They're not especially as you would want them to be, but only by doing it do you learn how you can do it. And practice absolutely makes perfect. And if there are videos that are in your archive that you think don't any longer represent your organization, it's easy to delete them.
I mean, so we worked with a client this past last 4 years. The videos we did at the start, they're out of brand date, right? So the brand has evolved over the last 4 years. And so what we did with them in the beginning of our partnership, well, great at the time, we don't like them anymore. The client doesn't like them. We don't like them. Like, it's not right. So when you start to make this video journey, I would say one of the things that I would do, especially since we're all coming up on budget season, agencies, as you talk with your clients, as you work through your own budgets, in a decent budget for video, even if you don't start using it until later in the year for 2020, you can take the last quarter of 2019 and the first quarter of 2020 to map out your video journey, and then you can continue to make them so you have the ability to retire the videos that you don't like anymore. that's really just where it goes.
Yeah. Now, I won't dwell on these, but I'm going to mention them very quickly in passing. There was a great video. I've put a link on the side here for anyone who wants to see. A great video here on how to shoot B-roll on your smartphone. Like I say, I won't play this just now, but I'll refer to it, because when you're building up video content, having B-roll, i.e. background content that you can have in videos, is really important, just from a practical.
Oh my gosh, it's so great. Like, we use it. So we've been talking about Carrie all day. Let's talk about them a little bit more. If you go to their Facebook page, like, we use B-roll that was shot for different videos for testimonials. Like, we just simply lay a graphic on top of it. If you click on videos right now,
here we go.
Or click on posts, either way, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, so right there, that first one, click that.
This one here?
First one, no, sorry. Where it says all videos. That's talking about who the company is.
This one here, Meet Melody? Okay, I'll just catch the volume as soon as it comes up.
There's no volume, so it doesn't matter. It's B-roll.
Cool.
So, I mean, it's just B-roll, right? But we use it to be able to share testimonials, because the movement catches the eye, and so it's different. And so, I mean, you can make that you can make that an iMovie even. Just put your clip there and then lay your graphic on top of it, do a little Google search.
You could also quite easily, if you've got access to a drone, then it's really easy to do. In fact, as I speak, I've got a little drone here, which is perfect for that sort of thing, so long as you're not scaring the cows. But if you have access to farmland and you're legally you're not anywhere near airports, then drone shots can be fabulous for B-roll, because you can have it rising up, it shows the building, it shows the environment, and that alongside other cut to shots is a great way of giving another dimension to any videos that you're shooting.
We love drone shots. They're great for being able to go around the exterior of the building, to be able to just float above, slightly above heads in an office space. I will tell you that if you are a company that has any kind of IP or confidentiality, that's something that has to be staged very carefully, because people will have things that you're not going to want seen on their desk. And just one desk having something that you can't see can kill your entire B-roll. So sketch it out, but it's worth it.
Yeah, I mentioned that actually in an explainer video that I did earlier in the week, just getting ready for video, top 10 tips. In fact, there's a link on the right there, where one of the things I mentioned is, if you're going to be filming in your office, wipe off the whiteboards. If there's anything on there that shouldn't be on there, then be safe and just wipe it off.
So wipe it off and put something else on there, right? Because nothing is sadder than an empty whiteboard.
There's a clear whiteboard right there. Well, there's nothing.
Like, just put something on there that you can talk about. And I mean, when we've had people put shapes, it doesn't really matter what it is, because usually that's not going to be the in focus part of the frame. But just having something on there is important to productivity. The other thing is, you have the video explainers. If you're doing a lot of camera phone filming in your organization, which is a great way, love that, to collect video from your employees, because it doesn't all have to be highly produced videos. In fact, I would argue that there's real value in today's social media platforms with the stories and the IGTV to have lesser produced and more candid video created. But if you're going to do that, put together just a PDF, like we do this with our clients. They get a PDF, it's like 20 pages long, of how to collect this video, where it needs to go, how it gets sent back, things that they should think about, questions they should answer, that kind of thing.
Storyboard. As you know, I've just gotten this. If anyone's interested, cost-wise, these are about $99, or I think about £80. And they're not made by DJI, but they're very, very good, and they've got DJI software. So just as an example, people are always asking me for tips on kit that they can be acquiring that's not going to cost an arm and a leg. And again, on the right hand side, I've got an idea list for things that you can buy on Amazon that are great for, especially making movies with your smartphones and so on. So
we'll all go on sailing in a month or two, so that'll be fantastic too.
Oh, very good. So, Crystal, I've noticed the time. We're supposed to be a half-hour show. We've gone 40 minutes. So we could talk all day. I know certainly I could, and I'm pretty sure you could too. But I know people have got to get back to work, and you almost certainly do have as well. So can I, at this point, thank you very, very much for joining me. It's been great to have you on. Lots of really good information, good tips on storytelling. If anyone wants to know more about Crystal, then the link to Crystal on LinkedIn is right there. And if anyone needs any tips and hints and advice, then I'm always happy to help. Sorry, Crystal, you want to say something?
Yeah, hit me up on Facebook. I hate LinkedIn. I mean, I don't hate LinkedIn. That's not why I say that. I'm just saying I hate the spam in my LinkedIn message box.
Yeah.
And like at 300 to 1,000 messages, I won't see you. But you can find me on Facebook at V1Crystal. You can hit me up on Twitter or Instagram, V1Crystal, TheOneCrystal. I'm a geek. I'll talk to you about this stuff all day.
Fantastic. That's perfect. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you, Crystal. And I look forward to having everyone back next Thursday, same time, same place. And we'll have another spectacular guest. And look forward to seeing you then. Thanks very much then, Crystal.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.